Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. President Trump does a great job of putting our supposed NATO allies on the spot when it comes to them failing to meet their spending obligations. But President Trump should also put the pressure on them for what they do spend their money on. And that's because a German warship, the frigate Hessen, accidentally fired 2 missiles at a U.S. Reaper drone. Apparently, someone got too trigger happy while patrolling the Red Sea as part of the EU's effort to combat the Yemeni Houthis and to free up international shipping through the key trade route. But think about that for a moment. There was an intel failure on board the warship, which made the Germans mistake the Americans for Houthis. Then, not 1, but 2, count 'em, missiles were fired. And those 2 both suffered from an unspecified technical failure and therefore missed their target utterly. What are they spending their NATO defense money on? If that's all the bang they're getting for their buck, then they're even farther away from their 2% goal than we previously thought. Well, actually, on second thought, I guess I can't get too mad. Remember when that Chinese spy balloon was flying overhead on our soil and our own military tried to shoot it down and missed? And then one of the targets the military did hit may have been the balloon of a hobby group and not from the Chinese communists. Incompetency is widespread these days. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin took a lot of heat for the Chinese spy balloon disaster, and rightfully so. But now it's another scandal which has him facing the justified wrath of Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz at a hearing today on Capitol Hill. Watch.
You didn't tell the president that you had cancer, that you were being treated for cancer, or that the treatment for that cancer had gone wrong because you saw it as personal and medical. And I think a lot of us have empathy for you in that regard. But now that you see how personal medical decisions are, will you call for the re-recruitment, restoration of full rank and back pay for the 8,600 service members who were vax mandated out of the military?
No, I won't.
That was powerful. But the sentiment expressed by Secretary Austin isn't something you'll just hear on the left. There is some concern that the Missouri Secretary of State doesn't believe in prioritizing the men and women of the military. That is what Jay Ashcroft's competitor is alleging in a new campaign ad. Take a listen.
How can Missouri better support our veterans and active duty military personnel?
You know, this isn't really probably what you want for your answer for your question. But I don't think we ought to treat people based on classifications. And I don't think we ought to say that if you live here, we're going to charge you this, but if you live here, we charge you this. I don't think we ought to say if you're in the military, we give you this discount, but everybody else has to pay twice as much.
Joining us now to discuss is Republican Missouri State Senator Bill Eigel, representing District 23. He's also, as you just saw, a candidate for governor of Missouri. Bill, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, Kara, thanhanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Great, happy to have you here. So explain for us what we just saw in that clip your team released about Ashcroft.
Yeah, so it was really kind of a bizarre event at a recent gubernatorial forum. A relatively simple question of how would you support military veterans in your state? Jay Ashcroft point blank answered that, well, I'm not sure that we should treat them any differently than anybody else. Which is really an odd tone. You don't often see a statewide campaign running on the idea that there aren't things that we can and should do to support the veterans in our communities. I mean, the veterans in our communities are facing many challenges that, quite frankly, a lot of folks don't face. And there are things that we can do to take care of our veterans, whether it's fully funding our veterans' homes in the state, whether it's making sure that they aren't subject to some of these crazy mandates about getting the COVID-19 shots. These are challenges they're facing. And I just couldn't, I was stunned sitting there 2 feet from Jay Ashcroft when he said that, well, he's just not going to tackle those issues, even though he was asked pretty point blank about it. And is that he, even after getting a tremendous amount of negative feedback from folks all over across the state, kind of doubled down on that. I guess he's really just not into really supporting and being proud of veterans.
You know, you're right. It is so strange that this is the tack that he is taking, because it's also strange the way he tries to make his point. He says, well, I don't think it's fair or right to treat people differently based on classification. I don't know if he's trying to make like a woke parallel saying, oh, we're not going to treat people differently. But the idea with the left is trying to treat people differently based on, you know, their immutable characteristics, how they were born, and we get all the different woke classifications. But that's not this at all. He completely missed the whole point. It's not a classification. It's a reward for what, like you said, what people are sacrificing